Well, thank you so much, everyone. And let me just skip my presentation and I'll tell you who I am. But I will say two things because that's not in the presentation. One of them, the first gift that I got for my own wedding, and that was my first experience with local artists, was Annie Glass. So yes. And when it comes to winter, honestly, I love the sun. I mean, I moved here 6 years back. Fog is not my thing. So the fact that there's sun during winter makes it very cheerful. It's my best season actually here in Vegas.
Yours, Pat.
Correct. Okay, and Doug, if I move a lot, tell me to right on it. So we're going to take a talk a bit today about how do we lead through chaos. And before that, let me tell you a bit about myself and why can I talk about chaos? I have around 30 years of experience. The majority of my experience was in the tech industry. That was when I was back in the Middle East. And I was based between Lebanon and Dubai, UAE. And during that, part of that journey was taking a startup from seed till it become a regional player in a very niche area in the software industry. We worked in several countries. I was based out of Lebanon. If you know anything about Lebanon, you know the chaos. And also, we did a lot of work in Iraq during the different phases. So, between the financial crisis, between some of the security stuff, some of the bonds, like we've done it all. 6 years back, when I was here from Santa Cruz, I started focusing on leadership development. And the reason why I started focusing on leadership development, and I created Lead for Impact, which is my company. It's a global organization out of California, but I work with different business partners globally on leadership development, which includes coaching, executive education, a lot of consulting work. And through the presentation, you will realize why I focus on leadership. I'm also, and I'm just making sure I'm not out of the window. So excuse me. And also, how do leaders become who they are? And now more than ever, because of the chaos that we are in, this becomes more important because as leaders, we are the ones that are supposed to see through the chaos, to have a way of moving forward. And actually, people are depending on us in order to lead them through these difficult times. And probably you are all familiar with fancy term. Simply, we're talking about volatility, complexity, and uncertainty. And if we look, that's part of the uncertainty. Dark is part of the uncertainty and the ambiguity. And in reality, if we look at where we are, like the changes in the political system, the social system, all the change in technology and AI that is affecting whatever profession we are in, our organizations, the workforce shortage, the prices of housing, and these are all interconnected. So we're talking about a complex, unpredictable change, and we're looking at how can we lead through all of this and find a bit of grounding. And when I'm talking about if we don't find grounding as leaders, then our organizations can find the path forward. So how do we do that? And in order to address that, I'm gonna. And how do we lead through chaos? One of the things that I've been studying, as I said, for the last 10 years, I've been looking about all different types of leaders, really, and studying them, podcasts, books, biographies, think about, well, whatever you think about. And actually, and this is just some of those leaders, and you might be aligned with what they created in the world, or you might not be aligned with what they created in the world. But these people left a mark on our world, and each one of us wants to leave a mark, maybe based on different values, but we are trying to kind of lead and create. So I started looking, I mean, they're very different in leadership styles, in their values, in their the legacies that they left. So what differentiates them? And in other words, what is common? If you're familiar if you're familiar with probably Margaret Thatcher and Jacinda Ardern, so Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Woman, I think everyone knows her. Her leadership style was quite the spyway or the highway, the iron fist, very decisive, very authoritative. It wasn't really the collaborative way when it comes to leadership. Again, whether we're aligned with what she did or not, she did leave a mark on the work. Why versus if I don't know if you're familiar with Jacinda, Malena said don't touch the wall. So Jacinda Ardern, who used to be the Prime Minister for New Zealand, and I probably, if you haven't heard about her during COVID and how she managed New Zealand, she was one of the really acknowledged leaders in how she managed that, and down to earth, empathy, collaborative, talks about imposter syndrome. Both of these women left a mark on our world. So what's common? Steve Jobs, definitely, you know who Steve Jobs is. I don't know if you know Paul Pullman, who used to be the CEO of Unilever for more than 10 years. Steve Jobs, the intensity, the tech rebel, the emotional tantrums, the innovation, quite the authoritative, actually, in his style. Power is centralized. While Paul Pullman, we know the great achievements of Steve Jobs. Paul Pullman, humble, soft, collaborative, all about instead of short-term profit, long-term profit, maximizing all stakeholders' value and sustainability. What's common between these two people? Last, I promise. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, who's the Crown Prince of Dubai, if you've ever been to Dubai for the 70s, just a pure desert. And if you go today to Dubai, he said, I'm going to put it on the map. And he did put it on the map, actually. I've talked to many people who never visited the Middle East, but they know Dubai. Compared to, so he left his own, and he is, compared to someone like Mahatma Gandhi, actually. Humble, down to earth, no royalty, no title. The people gave him the title. What's common? And with all those questioning and in my own personal experience, I think, which started, like when I started having my first leadership role, anyone familiar with Jack Welch? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was very young and we're talking about, I mean, I know I'm like almost 30 years back or something. And everyone, like when I started that, like thinking, how do leaders behave? Everyone was like gifting me Jack Welch. And I was thinking of Jack Welch, and he was a very influential business leader, GE. He turned it around, and he had 3 rules. One of them is maximizing shareholders' value at the expense of anything. The other 2, which are very interesting, was one of them, every year, performance evaluation for everyone. The least performance, the 10% least performance gets fired. No questions asked. And he says 80-20. And I'm not advertising him as their model, but during those days, that was how, look at, if you want to learn how to become a leader, this is a leader. And the last one is where it was all about the 20% that are high performers, because 80% of value is created by 20%. I started reading those books and I was very young, naive, and I was thinking, that's not me. I mean, this is not who I am. This is not like it did not sit right with my values, but everyone, and I worked with many shrewd businessmen at that time. I was in the tech industry, like who kind of adopted that style, but I was never there. And I got a lot of sometimes pushback from even my board and the way I led, but that wasn't me. So when I was looking at all those people, one thing that I realized, and that research, like a lot of their biographies, these people were actually authentic. And let me say something. When I say authentic, most of us immediately start thinking about the empathy, about the compassion, about the But I argue that this is not the original of authentic. Authentic comes from the Greek word authentikos, which means of origin, of an original origin. So if I say this piece of art is authentic, this means we know this is any glass, and that was made by the artist or the company that is. And those people knew exactly who they are. They knew what their values. So, for example, Jack Welch knew that it is about maximizing shareholder value. Paul Pullman actually had a war with one of their investors in order to say no, long-term profit is more important than short-term profit. And he and Unilever won that kind of a war in that. So they knew who they are, which means they knew their values, they knew their strength, they knew their challenges, they knew their experiences, what they stand for, and what their dreams are, and who they serve. And they were unapologetic about that. And they embodied it in every way, with all the good and all the bad. And of course, that's not something that is carved in stone. But over the time, they evolved. We know how Steve Jobs, after he got picked from Apple, when he came back, he was more collaborative. He listened more to his shareholders. So they changed, but at any moment in time, they knew who they are. And we will see why this is very important, especially when we are going through chaos. Because in reality, when the world is not stable, when the world is not grounded, when we don't know what's happening around us, the only thing that can give us grounding is our leadership. And when we think about the leadership, is the compass, our values, strengths, challenges, experiences, who we serve and how. And that's why the like based on that like studying all those leaders, I saw four pillars really that you can see all through these leaders. The first one we talked about it, which is that compass, which is and knowing it, having the courage, standing up for it. But once you know that authentic core, the next pillar becomes adaptability. And we were going to look at what kind of adaptability we are talking about. It's not adaptability that changes the values, but it's adaptability that is situational, that where we said people know their strengths and challenges, knowing their challenges and how they adapt so that they behave based on the situation. And that's where we see situational leadership. And I will talk more about mental agility. Taking massive action, I don't think you need me to talk about that. I'm sure every single person in this room already is taking massive action. The challenge is when there is chaos, is that leaders need to act when they don't know. We don't have all the data. Even when we are running the scenarios, we don't know really what's the outcome of those scenarios. And still, we do need to act. And then we need to be agile, so we need to be correct. So I think that's the main thing that changes when we are talking about, especially environments like we are in. The last pillar is shaping legacy intentionally. And the reason why I say legacy, and it comes after all that journey, is because that's really when you recognize who you are, what you stand for, so what you want to be remembered for. This is very different than the goals that we set for every year as leaders. And that's why this is a journey. Some of us are very lucky that know what kind of legacy they want to leave very early in life. But most of us at the beginning, we're doing goals and objectives, but we don't know really what's the legacy. And it could change every phase of life. And why is it very important, this whole authentic? And again, authentic in the being original. I'm not trying to pitch be a Jack Welch or be a Steve Jobs but I'm saying embracing who you really are. Because that journey not only makes each one of us a more effective leader, but also it's fulfilling. You're not wearing a mask, pretending to be someone that you are not. And I've seen that with myself and with my work, with my studies and with my work with many leaders which was part of what I do from day to day. The other one, which I talked about, and I will see an example around it. When there is so much uncertainty, what gives you grounding? I remember the days when things was really a mess, and we lost all our contracts in Iraq, and I mean, what gives you? You go to your board, and they expect you to come with answers. Your teams look at you, and they expect you to know. And in reality, for God's sake, like I didn't know, but I knew my values, and I will give an example about myself. Someone more more important. So that's for you, and today is about you. But also, we know from studies like the Harvard Business Review had a study which said 75% of employees seek more authenticity, and leaders are their role models. We know that today we have a crisis of engagement. If you follow the Gallup research that looks how engaged people are, only 23% of employees are engaged. The rest, they come check in, check out really, and tell me what to do, I will do it. So that's, and also research shows us that authentic leadership increases employee performance. Ready. So why don't we do it? Oh no, there's a story before how I got to do it. Let's give an example, and I chose something not from tech. And again, probably all of you know who Howard Schultz is, and didn't want it to be tech. I'm not saying be him. I'm not embracing everything he did, but when he came in 2008, and we know there was a financial crisis, we also know that at that time Starbucks got a very diluted. I know Santa Cruz is not fond of Starbucks, but just for the you know. No, I've been here for 6 years, but I understand. But also, when he came, he realized that with the rapid expansion, it diluted the identity of Starbucks. Starbucks during his days, and let me tell you his values, then I'll tell you during his days. Starbucks, his values as leadership, and that's an overarching, again, human connection. And that's why he believes Starbucks is a third place. And if you know what third place is that place where it's not home, it's not work, but it's places where we come together to connect as humans. And Starbucks during his day was that kind of a environment, but then it got diluted when it expanded. He was committed to quality, and he respected his employees, and he always referred to them as partners. So when he came 2008, and there was a mess, he did many things, but the key things that did and brought Starbucks back to the financial, to be financially healthy and to expand again. He decided that, you know what, I'm closing all the Starbucks for one day because he's going to retrain baristas, because that's his commitment to quality. Then he said, we differentiated ourselves because we were the third place. What happened that we diluted the third place? So he brought experts, and they did many focus groups, and to look at how can they bring the core of the brand and become a third place again. And there were several initiatives that he started at that time to bring back that sense of community. He introduced free Wi-Fi for the members. He also introduced health benefits for the employees. So the core values that he had were actually, because usually the organization culture and how an organization leads is very much affected by the values, the real ones actually, of the leaders. It's not what's on the website. It's not what's on the workbook, but actually what they do daily basis. And that's an example why when things are very messy, if we know what we stand for, if we know what our real values, it's not just a kind of it's not just because it's cool, but actually it gives us a solid compass. With that, I have a question. What do you think Steve Jobs would have done if he was brought into 2008 to Starbucks to save Starbucks? And we can start by thinking, what are his core values as leadership, which we can see easily in Apple. And I'm going to drink a sip of water.
Since we would have screened it.
That's good. Everyone, I agree. I fully agree.
He would have taken everyone out for a beer. He would have screened some of them apart.
That's one thing. What are the core values of Apple?
Simplicity and design.
Simplicity is definitely one of them. Design and innovation is definitely a core one of them. Yes.
All-inclusive experience.
All-inclusive experience.
I think he would have got some creative insight. That's all.
And radical creative insights. So if he was doing Starbucks in 2008, what few actions, other than yelling, other than the beers, other than throwing few pieces of paper, what do you think he would have done? In general, I mean, I'm not asking you to. What is Apple so good with? And what is Melina?
Two things: redesigning the packaging and then redesigning the first experience.
Redesigning the user experience for sure was something that he would do, because if you think of Apple, it's all about the user experience and the consistency and the simplicity. Look at all the packaging, even, you know, the white kind of
The Apple Store, that's still a perfect example.
I just think that's
Would have established, got everybody together, established the vision, figure out what they want to achieve, and then plan.
definitely. Sorry.
And you would have acquired beers and coffee and seamlessly integrated everything.
Definitely. And he would think, and he would look at the products and probably kind of removed some of the offering from some of the products, discontinued some of the products, and looked at one or two real products, you know, the iPods that, like, but we're talking coffee, and completely renovated the products, which actually this is not what Charles did. Let me ask you a different question. What would Shirley Sandberg do? And again, we can start with her values as from whatever as a leader. What do you think she would have done?
Share on Facebook?
Yes. Yep.
Someone's like,
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about her.
So let me then at least share the values of. She's well known. She's data driven, so she looks at numbers and data driven. She is all about efficiency. She's all about operational excellence. There's the DAI bit, but I don't know if that's could have like, because when she, from the what we know about her, when her decisions, she's data driven, operations focus, and efficiency. Not the Jack Welch, but a bit of like, maybe I could have asked what Jack Welch would have done, but I mean, what do you think she would have done?
Crunch the numbers.
Crunch the numbers, and what does that mean? Exactly. And his glass. What makes more money is the one. Definitely, she would have looked at the numbers. She would have immediately closed the stores that are underperforming with no questions asked. Instead of trying to invest more money in actually training the baristas. And she would probably, because operational excellence was her thing, is looked at where in the operation, how could it be more optimized? And all of those, whatever Schultz did, what Steve Jobs would have done, or what Sheryl Sandberg would have done, they would have all saved Starbucks. But each one of them chose a path and a roadmap based on their own values, which distinguishes the brand also. And that's sometimes where we see when we bring a new CEO who doesn't even like really understand the core values of a brand or of a company, not the ones on the website. They start like, and you find people confused because they don't know what, like, it doesn't fit with the culture. It doesn't fit with the brand. It doesn't, and we have seen that. So now that hopefully I'm pitched authentic, and that kind of is making sense. Why do we shy away from discovering or embracing our authentic leadership style?
Fear of criticism.
Definitely. There's a lot of fear. And that's the third one. I forgot to, I didn't know. But one size fits all. We all believe, when I started, I wanted the book, like, who am I supposed to model so that I'm a great leader, Didn't work, wasn't me, I couldn't. But in reality, we're always looking out there at that best style that can help. Leadership through imitation. He's a great leader, she's a great leader. Maybe if I imitate her style, I can look at her, that makes me a better leader. But in reality, we can learn from great leaders. It can be tools for our toolbox, but we can't imitate them. And I'll give a very short, interesting story about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs. Indra Nooyi, the ex-CEO and chairwoman of PepsiCo for 20 years. When she came on board at PepsiCo, she was the first woman, I think the third woman in the top 500 Fortune to be a woman. She's a woman of color. So it was all new. And if you've ever seen her and seen some of her interviews, very gracious, very composed, sharp woman, great in crunching the numbers, but very more like a soft-spoken, composed, gracious. Culture plays a big role. She asked Steve Jobs when she became the CEO. She asked Steve Jobs for an hour or so for advice about how his leadership and everything. And he sits with her for 3 hours. One of the things that he tells her, throw the papers, don't be scared of, if you believe in something and if you believe it's good for the company, don't shy away from throwing emotional tantrums, throwing papers in the room, show your passion, and don't shy away from that. Oh, is there a story there? It might be. I'm sorry, I shouldn't get my Let me tell you, but let me tell you what Indra Nooyi did. And these are based on her words. Indra Nooyi, she's sharp, strong character. But when she was very emotional, she used to go to the bathroom, whether she wants to scream or to cry or whatever. Then she clears everything, comes back, and you would see the same exact gracious, poised person. After she talked to Steve Jobs, she says, "I never started throwing papers away." But I did back you she on the tables. I did show passion because he told her, "Don't be too nice." So she took the part where, and he said, "Don't be scared of showing passion." So she took that, but the way she introduced that into her own leadership was completely different. She raised her voice a bit. She started showing the emotion so that people know that this is not acceptable. And that's what we need. And that's what does it mean to stay authentic, but while learning from greatness. The last one, and someone talked about fears. One of the reasons why we don't embrace that authentic leadership is, and I'm going to quote Adam Grant, I'm sure you all know him. Intelligence is traditionally viewed as the ability to think and learn. Yet in a turbulent world, there's another set of cognitive skills that might matter more. The ability to rethink and to unlearn. And I think the unlearning, I would go a session just about unlearning because of how important that is. And we think we need to learn more to build a new persona, but in reality, it's unlearning because of our fear of criticism, because of the bad role models, so allowing ourselves to unlearn all of that so we can find our path into that kind of a core authentic leadership that helps us all through and mainly when the world is going in chaos. And once we know who we are and we know the values and we know what we stand for, that's when we start thinking about mental agility. And mental agility is the ability to be adaptable. And we all know, and I'm sure everyone have experienced that, through chaos, we are asked to be adaptable more than any time ever in our behavior as leaders. And let me tell you what does mental agility. Maybe it's easier. Actually, I will go back to this, but let me just give you an example. A thinking strategy, which is about mental agility, is how we think about things. It's about our operating system. It is not actually about the content of what we are thinking about. And strategy, we has two ends, and these are like the opposite ends. There are some people that when they want to learn about something or construct an understanding of something, they need to see the small details. And once they see the small details, they can build up to see the bigger picture. They need to see the trees, count the trees, understand every single tree, and then they can build up to go to the bigger picture. It's autopilot. They don't think of how they learn or think or process the world, but that's how you do. Each one of us is. And there are people on the other end of that spectrum where actually we start by, we need to see the forest, understand the concept, don't pull me into details, I need this, and they're more comfortable in that. And then they can start going into the details and dissecting the details. I'm one of those. Not completely on that, because each one of us is somewhere on the spectrum, but I'm just giving the extremes. But that's that's what a thinking strategy is. And it's very important to know, because that's your strength and that's your challenge. I know for myself, my strength is I'm a big picture person, I'm a strategy person, I'm a vision person. It's amazing. If I'm not conscious, I can stay in that place and not dig into the details because I'm impatient. I don't like details. So I trained myself that when I need to go into details, coffee, did it and I know when and what kind of details. And that's the agility in reality. And it applies on everything. And there's no good or bad. And each one of us is on a different part of the spectrum, but we need to know where we are, because that's where adaptability actually starts. I could have told the story, but I think, how much time do I have? Can I tell you a story? So, one of the people why this is very important. One of the people that like a brilliant woman that I was working with, I was brought by her board. Brilliant woman. She was in a senior operational role, and they headhunted her. She became in a CEO role. After a few months, I got a call, and there were two things that they were kind of complaining about. One of them, her senior leaders were complaining about a bit of micromanagement. And the other one is the board was starting to get frustrated a bit with how she does the reporting, because her reporting is a bit more detailed than it should be. Mm-hmm. So they want the big picture, they don't want the details. And a brilliant woman, they headhunted her. The first time, in our first kind of a call, just trying to understand her, from the way she was telling me the story, I knew what was happening. You know how you ask them, how was the meeting? Great, the meeting was very good. We're going to follow up in a couple of weeks, and I'll keep you posted. Another person, how did the meeting go? Oh, we arrived there, we couldn't see the person, we have to sit there, but we met that, and we talked about this, and immediately, they are more on that side of that's thinking strategy. So part of what the work was realizing, and she was excellent in operations, because operations is about details. So that was her gift. When she came to the place when it was more about the strategy, the bigger picture, it was harder. Was it impossible? No. By the time we worked together for some time, she realized that she knew when needs she to be agile. She was doing great. At least I never heard from her. She's doing great. So that's where we kind of start thinking of our agility, and that's very important. And we'll talk about it different. There are many of those thinking strategies that we need to be aware of and know where we are and how to be agile. But I will talk about because it's very important, especially through chaos. Because let me explain, and then I'll say why it is. And that's what we call authority source, and whether it's internal or external. In simple words, some people, when they take their decisions, their judgment, their feelings, is very much the authority for all of that comes from internal. So they can decide on their own. They're comfortable with their emotions. They can say like they can counter, like if everyone agrees on something, but I believe that this is not right, I will tell everyone, you know what, this is not true. Like, so they have this, their locus of control, their authority is very much internal. And we'll see where this is good and where this can be a problem. While others, like it's more external. So I'm not sure if the coffee is good. What do you think? Do you think the coffee was good? Oh, no, not well. Yeah, I know. I also didn't like the coffee. In meetings, it's the people that wait to see where the consensus will be, or the leaders actually, where they think every single thing needs to be a consensus thing, right? They're great. And let me just, usually people who have now started with the external are very good. They are inclusive. They are very good in how they collaborate. They can build rapport easily. They can get buy-in from their stakeholders easily. So these things come very natural to them, and they are very good with it. People that have their authority source as internal, they are usually innovative because they don't care to be like they can think on their own, think on their feet. They can be original. They can be very clear and focused because they're not distracted with what everyone else thinks or wants. Very resilient and self-reliant. However, if you are, and each one of us is one place on the spectrum, but if you're completely on that internal like authority source, usually what we see with these people is that they can be difficult in collaborating because it's my way or the highway. They can resist change. They can be overconfident. They might lack humility, and they are not good in building buy-in because that's what I think, and that's no matter what you all think, that's what I think. So if they are at that extreme and not agile, that's a problem. On the other side, people that their authority source is very much external. What happens is, in reality, they don't have a clear sense of direction, and I've seen it, and you see that with the organizations because they can't make up their mind, and we know that if you go into a board meeting or with your leaders or with your teams, there will be conflict, and there will be so sometimes that they lack that decisiveness to be able actually to have that clarity and give their teams that clarity. And when things, and we'll talk a bit about decision making, when there is chaos, it's very hard for them to take decisions because they are looking for an external validation. And let me say something, and we'll talk about it when it comes to decision making. When we're talking about external validation, it's not only about people, but also information. It's something that comes out like information. It could be data, it could be, and all of that is important, but especially through chaos. In reality, that's the biggest problem. We really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like if anything could happen. So if we don't have that validation from the external world, they can get lost. Fear of conflict, a very big one. We like, and that's a huge problem when it comes to a leader that fears conflict. If you think of many of the stories that and the leaders that we talked about, they had the courage to not have conflict. In Janui, when she wanted to introduce that very poised, soft-spoken, when she wanted to introduce healthy options for PepsiCo, because she believed that first, the corporations are causing part of the obesity crisis in the US, and also because the customer market is changing and they are eventually going to start look at healthier options. She told the board, because they were worried about part of the shareholders, if her plan was not approved, she's going to resign because she believes this is the future of the company. And she was right. So that's why, sorry. That's why knowing when to use what is very important. And fear of conflict with people who they are off balance can be a big issue. Uh, uh, there's difficulty prioritizing and other things. But let's talk about decision making. And we all know that leadership is about decision making. And that's the muscle that you use most, whether you consult with others or not. But in reality, a big part of the fatigue, I know that for myself, I'm sure for many of you, was about decision making all the time, right? And if you're in leadership position, you decide and you have to bear the consequences. In a VUCA world or in uncertainty, that even becomes harder because people get more scared of taking decisions. So they come back to you to decide. And when people have their healthy balance, if you want, of knowing when to have that internal authority and when to consult and have that authority from others, they know when to use what. And we can look a bit about that details in the Q&A, because I know there's another presentation that I don't want to. But when we are in such a VUCA world, sometimes we need quick decisions, which means there's no time for consultation. There's no time for experts. So if we're scared of taking decisions on our own, we have an issue. So that's where this becomes important. If, as I said, we don't have data, there's ambiguous context. If we're standing on our feet, we know who we are. I go back to the authenticity, and we know we can take decisions even when when we don't have enough data. Challenging group things. I've sat in meetings where you look at everyone looking at everyone and just thinking, like, there's no way that people don't realize that this is not true or this is not right. So that's when, especially in these days, someone can come up and say, you know what, I don't agree. I don't know. I don't care what I don't agree. Unpopular decisions. And I will just give several examples about unpopular decisions in January, Paul Polman, even Steve Jobs, when, you know what, it's unpopular. People don't like it. I'm talking about arrogance, like the arrogance or the lack of humility. I mean, there's a method where how we can do both. But also sometimes we need to own and have the courage to do unpopular decisions. I remember at some point in time, and we were going through financial issues. All our money from Iraq stopped, and I needed to take unpopular decisions. Actually, I opted for unpopular decisions with my board rather than unpopular decisions with my teams. But it's and we need to stand up for it. And it's hard if we don't have that internal authority. While where we use, especially in a VUCA world, and when there is chaos, where we need to also know when to consult, when to have our listen to the external world, inclusive decision making in very complex situations when actually we can see through. Sometimes, and if the resources are available, 5 people deciding on one thing is much better than one person deciding when in the right environment. Biases. We all have our biases, no matter what, conscious and unconscious biases. And sometimes having many people, especially when we don't know. I volunteer with a board, and yesterday, 2 days back, we had a board meeting, and with all the changes and the situation, the political situation, and there's emotions, there's a lot of fear, there's uncertainty, and we had a very heated debate, actually. But that debate showed a lot of our biases, conscious and unconscious. And I think the decision that was taken at the end was more like a more, let me say, balanced, more wiser decision even. I don't know where it will take us, but it did. Validating decisions with external data experts, better decisions if that is available. And one of the most important one is building alignment with stakeholders. If the organization, I was talking about when we were going through difficult cash flow difficulties because of what happened with Iraq, and most of our projects were on freeze, 2013, ISIS, and all of that. I had to take difficult decisions, but at the same time, what I did at that time is I talked to our senior people, and then we had like kind of a town hall meeting. And I explained the situation, and I said, we have different ways that we can go, and it's going to be hard no matter what. We can look at put it like layoffs. We can look at paying like partial salaries. We can look at, and we had that open conversation. And I immediately said, there's pain that is coming, but the coming 6 months, like there's something we need to do about it. Um, there was a preference from my board how we should do that, but I wasn't comfortable with what's the suggestion. So I wanted to figure it out, and they were not gonna uh, interfere to help. And based on that conversation, the teams decided that, and we did several kind of a consultation, and that you know what, we will take cuts in salaries, but we don't want to have layoffs because of the people that we have, blah blah blah. And we had a very good organizational culture. I'm proud of that. And in reality, people were still working tech. So sorry for no work life balance, but we were still working till 2 3 a.m. While people actually accepted willingly to take cuts in their salaries and their bonuses and their, and it, I mean, we got over it, but it was a very tough 6 months. And that's where we say buy-in, like and how you build buy-in when you simply uh, um, consult. So it's a balance between this and that and what works. And there's a kind of a formula, but not a perfect formula. It's art and science. I'm done. I just need 5 minutes. Look at that. I have a question for you. Um, just turn to the person next to you, and if there's not 2 people, maybe 3 people, and where where do you think you are on that continuum? And I'm going to go with that. Sure, whatever you're comfortable with, but where do you think you are on the continuum? And I will start with my own, so that I tend to be, I used to be more towards the external, but that's why I'm getting collaboration, building buy-in, block it. But I learned with time and with more maturity to be in a better balance and to know where I am. And so, where do you think you are today in your leadership? Closer here, closest to the external authority. Um, do you think there's a place where if you change a bit, it would be your leadership will become more effective? And is there anything that you would like to commit to? And if I can ask you, just turn to the next person, 5 minutes before I get kicked by Melina, and share 2 minutes per person. And where do you think you are? Do you think you would benefit from
Bye.